Hi, my name is Hannah Jorgensen, and I'm going to tell you about my student research project I did titled Restoring the Native American Spirit. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about this project. I restored these photographs in honor of my grandpa, Ralph Wilson, who just recently passed away. He made a book of these photos in honor of his father, Otto Wilson, who photographed the Native Americans. His book is titled Cameraman Picture Woman. The photos are over 75 years old and have been exhibited across the world. They were last displayed in 1984 under the title of One Man's Vision. The reason I chose to name my project Restoring the Native American Spirit was sort of a play on words, because not only am I restoring the photos, but I'm actually restoring or recapturing the spirit of the Native Americans in the photos, as well as honoring the spirit of my grandpa and great-grandpa. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the restoration process. First, what I had to do was gather any original prints and negatives and digitally rephotograph them or scan them in. The images were then transferred to an image CD so I could access them on my computer and begin the restoration process. Programs I used were Photoshop CS5 and Aperture to restore the photos, and I used those basically to crop, retouch, desaturate, recolorize, and do other things to make all the photos look uniform. I also used the clone stamp a lot and the healing brush. Many hours were spent on each photo retouching tears, dust spots, water damage, scratches, and any imperfections. I met with my mentor Derek Burbel several times during the process for tips and advice, and the information I gathered on the Native Americans in the photos came from my grandpa's book and from numerous conversations I had with him, and he had a very great passion for history and a great deal of respect for the Native Americans. Although there were very many photos involved in this process, I have actually chosen 5 of my favorites to share with you today. And then the final outcome of this project was to have the final product mounted on 16 by 20 inch gator boards, and I hope to one day display them in different places around Nebraska as they once were many years ago. And so far I have had 5 prints mounted. The first photo I'm going to share with you is titled Entering the Spirit World. On the left is the before and on the right is the after. I will go into a little more detail in my next slides about how I restored these photos. This photo is of Omaha Indian John Miller, tribal name Indian Wallashawah, meaning loud thunder. Taken during the 1930s, it has remained to be a personal favorite among the collection between my grandpa and I, mostly because it's developed a deeper meaning for us. Now, I don't want to bore you with all the boring details, so I'll try to talk fast. On the left is the before, and you can see there's some dust spots on his stomach just above his robe and some discoloration on his robe. What I used was the clone stamp and the healing brush in Photoshop to basically stamp over any imperfections, and on the right you can see the finished product. I zoomed in closely so you could see the detail, but it takes time, but it can be done, and on the right it looks quite a bit better than the before, I would say. The majority of the photos required some cropping, but I chose to use this particular one as an example. On the top in the before version, you can see that there's a black edge kind of around it and then some discoloration, and all I did was in Photoshop use the crop tool to basically just crop that out. And on the bottom in the after version, you can see that it's a very clean line around the edge. The next photo is also of Omaha Indian John Miller. On the left is the before and on the right is after. This photo was taken during the 1930s in Macy, Nebraska. He's wearing an eagle feather headdress, and very few of these headdresses were ever seen. That's because only a brave man could wear this type of headdress. They would hold a great ceremony where a feather would be awarded. The man would stand up, hold up his feather, and tell the brave deed he thought he had done. If no one disputed his claim, he could then add it to his headdress. This photo has been exhibited many places in the U.S. and even as far as Canada in 1936. The main problem with this photo was scratches. In the upper right hand corner on the left in the before image you can see there's a lot of scratches. It actually may be kind of hard to see, but on the original print it was pretty obvious. So what I did in Photoshop was use the clone stamp and the healing brush to basically just kind of smooth that out and create a better finish, as you can see on the right. This next photo is also of Omaha Indian John Miller, who obviously was pretty popular back in the day. On the left is the before and on the right is the after. Because these pictures were stored in my grandpa's garage, a lot of them received some water damage. And you can see that in the before image, and I just used the clone stamp tool also and the healing brush tool to move that out, and on the right you can see it's gone, and it is time consuming, but it can be done. This next photo is titled Indian Love Call, and you can see the before and after. This photo was taken by Otto Wilson in 1932 at a powwow in Macy, Nebraska. His wife said that the Indian is wearing a deer tail headdress made from a deer and one eagle feather. Back then, when an Indian was in love, he would go to the spring, and when the maiden of his choice arrived, he would play his love call on the flute. The biggest issue I found with this photo was the color. Because it was so old, it started to yellow and lose its contrast. All I had to do was desaturate, meaning pull out all the color from the photo and add it back in by adding in black and white and adjusting the tones. By adjusting the tones, I can also mess with the contrast and kind of bump it up a little bit to make it pop a little more. The last photo I'll talk about is titled Mother and Babe. You can see the before and after here. This photo is of Omaha Indian Margaret Blackbird and her baby Inkawashushi, meaning brave person. It was taken in 1933 by Otto Wilson. It doesn't take an expert to see what was wrong with this photo. As you can see, there's a big tear or crease across the upper left-hand corner. This photo was the most time-consuming for me, and I spent a lot of time just making sure that it didn't look obviously photoshopped. And I think I did a pretty good job. On the right you can see it doesn't look very photoshopped, or maybe I'm biased, but I think I did a pretty good job with this one.